No. 1212, hello? No, I did not shave my head for the 4B movement. I just recently discovered I have a round head and that baldness is the thing that makes the most sense for said round head. It's fun. I'm enjoying being bald. So it's been about a week at time of filming this video that, Trump won the election. And listen, the dolls are not okay. Which is fine. Like, your guy didn't win. It's fair. It's fair to not be okay because, your rights are on the line. That's your rights, your money, your family's rights, your whole uterus. It's fair to be upset. But we're doing a lot of blame gaming. Kanye West, play the blame game. I love you more. Let's play the blame. We're doing a lot of that. And it's just getting real messy. So I just wanted to talk about it. Firstly, all the people that voted for Trump that are now surprised that their rights are being taken away or that their families are ostracizing them.
Y'all seen what's going on the white side of TikTok? I don't know how I made it over there, but baby, them women is divorcing their husbands over this election. They is divorcing their husbands, child. It's getting messy, messy, messy.
However true or anecdotal, yeah. It's the age-old adage of, I didn't know the leopards would eat my face, I didn't know. It's lie down with dogs, wake up with fleas. It's color me shocked, but not really, because what did you expect, girl? And it's only gonna get worse for more of us than not. But beyond people cutting off their Trump voting family members, there's a lot of people trying to figure out, okay, we were able to blame white women in 2016. Who do we blame now? Even though he won the popular vote, even though he still had a lot of white people voting for him, women included, even though that's all still true, because he made strides with Latino men, it's their fault. Because he made strides with black men, it's their fault. And one that's been taking off more on TikTok that I was seeing is because Muslim Americans, Arab Americans vocally shared their dismay, displeasure at genocide and decided that they were either going to vote third party, just vote down the ballot and leave the presidential one empty, stick with the local races, or opt out completely, which in a democracy you are allowed to do. Whether you agree with that person doing it or not, you are allowed to do that in a so-called democracy because you have the right to vote or not. Yes, people have died for that right. Yes, it is something that I think is important. And I understand that there are some issues for some people that it doesn't matter how many other issues are on the ballot. If that issue is not being addressed, you're not going to get my vote. And that's the thing you need to win. So it is strategic and smart for me to withhold it. You know what I'm saying? But started seeing on TikTok a lot of black women posting about going back to Starbucks because we are tired of doing all the heavy lifting. Because as you know, black folks in general typically vote Democratic. We're pretty loyal. It's like 92% of black women, I believe, voted for Kamala. Like, we're pretty, you'd have to have something, must be a day ending in Z for black women to vote non-democratic, even if we don't love the Democratic candidate that's on the ballot. Like, for the most part, we'll just do that, right? So it's a voter base that Democrats have been able to rely on. So, a lot of black women online are like, well, I did my part. I showed up to the ballot. I may have waited in line. I sent in my ballot. I did all the things. I voted blue. Even if I cared who, even if I wasn't 100% sure who, I voted blue. What the fuck was everybody else doing? And I hear you. I hear you, I hear you, I hear you, sister friend, girl. However, this ain't how boycotts work, y'all. Come on now. Y'all know this is not how boycotts work. If you go boycott something, you can't be like, actually, y'all didn't do the voting thing, so we just go. I mean, you can, because you, like, philosophically, you can do whatever you want. But it just... That's not a good look, y'all. What do you mean? You're going back to Starbucks.
And let me say this. I cried all yesterday, but today I woke up and got some Starbucks. Fuck y'all. We're done. For the next 4 years, we don't give a fuck about anybody else's problem. Cheers, ladies.
Black folks, take y'all asses back to Starbucks. Go get your mocha frappuccinos. Cause I'm about to go get me a whole 24 fucking case. I sure am. I just saw a video of a Palestinian woman saying, vote for Jill Stein or Donald Trump, or whatever you do, don't vote for Kamala Harris because you will not be accepted into my community. Fine, bitch. We're gonna go ahead and give money to that community. Fine, fuck that. I am on my petty era. I am in the most pettiest place that I could be as a fucking Sagittarius. And for me, when I get to this point as Sagittarius, baby, I'm burning everybody, okay? Myself included, the bridge, the house, the people, the animals, and the motherfucking trees. Everybody can get it. Black folks, fuck that shit. Go get your frappuccinos. Go back to McDonald's. Stop protesting everybody that we was protesting, because we already know what the fuck they did. They fucked us because they were already fucked and didn't know that fucking us fucked them even more, because we ain't for y'all asses no more. Suffer. I actually feel good about that. I'm going to get Starbucks.
But okay, actually, let me clarify something real quick, because I think what we also need to understand is when it comes to boycotting, you have to know what you're boycotting and why, and it has to be organized. I've been doing little research for fun on my own about boycotts, just because I want to know what's effective and what isn't, because I want to do something useful. I care about managing my time efficiently. And the McDonald's, Starbucks boycotts, y'all, we weren't fully informed. And it's not to say that you should go back to Starbucks. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying people weren't fully informed and they were just kind of going off of things. And those things were TikToks. Because the Starbucks ban, there was, say that Starbucks was giving money to IDF soldiers. Long story short, I'm gonna just read you a little bit from an article I found. The controversy began with a hoax letter that claimed Starbucks was funding the Israeli military. This sparked outrage, particularly in regions sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. The boycott gained traction, especially on social media platforms such as TikTok and X, where the hashtag #BoycottStarbucks had millions of views. Many continue to say that Starbucks is either directly or indirectly supporting Israel. And there was a TikTok I found that added this context to the Starbucks boycott, and the fact that Starbucks and McDonald's aren't on the BDS list, but people just kind of heard the narrative and wanted to do, looking at people in a good light, wanted to do something good and supportive for a marginalized group in a part of the world of people that they will most likely never meet, never speak to, never interact with. But they wanted to do something to show their support and solidarity, right? Besides protesting or calling your representative. Like, after a while, it was like, bitch, I feel like I'm not doing anything. So if I just cut out Starbucks, if I just cut out McDonald's, maybe that's helping. And unfortunately, because the internet is just like, one thing catches on fire and people just run with it, we don't do our due diligence ourselves as people wanting to do good in the world. And sometimes out of laziness, we don't do our due diligence and we don't look further into not only what exactly is the truth, but why is this happening? Specifically with a boycott, why are we boycotting? And who exactly are we? Boycotts work. So far from what I've been learning, I'm not an expert. I'm just yapping over here, okay? But boycotts work when you have more organization and it's concentrated. And not only is it concentrated, but there are measures in place for people that are participating in the boycott to help out. Now, I'm thinking of something like Montgomery bus boycotts in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement, when they not only organized to boycott, but they knew the person that they were organizing around, Rosa Parks, because she wasn't the first person to refuse to give her seat to a white person. It was Claudette. What's her last name? I'll put it over here. She did it before Rosa, but she was, she was a dark-skinned teen mom. So they were kind of like, we can't really rally around you. Plus, Rosa works at the NAACP. So we just gonna rally around her. She's an older woman. She's light-skinned. She's very sympathetic. She's going to be the face of this. And not only are we going to do that, we're going to organize in our city so that people will carpool, people will have rides, we'll be able to get to and from where they need to go. Because we know people rely on the bus. Like, it was organized. And these sorts of things take time, too. It's not something that just happens out of nowhere. Again, giving up something like Starbucks is a lot easier compared to like boycotting transit or giving up some of the brands that we purchase. On paper seems a lot easier, although I know sometimes with the chain of goods and services, it's hard to know, okay, just living in this part of the world, most of the things that you're going to get aren't going to be ethical. But all of that to say, good God, long story short, my ass. The girlies said we're going back to Starbucks and everybody can kiss our asses. And I would just implore some of us to, yes, feel your feelings, because your feelings are not wrong or right. They just are. They're information. Feel your feelings about being upset that the person you wanted to win did not win, and that this means a lot of really scary shit coming down the pipe. Potentially. Probably. It's scary, and it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be pissed off and frustrated and angry, especially when you feel like you've done your part. But I also want you to consider other folks watching their people just completely being exterminated from their land, and seeing a politician play in their faces about what they're going to do when they're elected. Seeing a politician play in their faces and say, you need to elect me because XYZ, all of these other rights. And it's like, yeah, I care about those rights, but my people are literally being killed and you're funding it. So how can I give you my vote? And people could argue, well, you could say America's funding genocides in other parts of the world. Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. Yeah. And therefore, you could also choose not to use your vote. I know that I have said personally, I don't necessarily agree, but I try to be sympathetic to that perspective because I understand it. Even if I'm going to still vote, even if I'm going to, vote blue and cringe, I get it. And this is part of the problem that I think we have on this left side of the political spectrum, is that people don't make as much room for our difference and disagreements, even though we're supposed to be a group that is progressive and is about all the different shapes and forms that people come in. Aesthetically, identity-wise, sure, but when it comes to finding different ways of communicating and conflict and the messy, tension-filled, emotional, frustrating work of a coalition, yeah, we got a lot of work to do, girlies. We got a lot of work to do. A lot. So who's to blame first? Joe Biden. Joe Biden stayed in office way too fucking long. He should have left. He shouldn't even be there now. Why did he run for re-election? This was so annoying. Kamala did not have enough time. 3 months was not enough time for her to get it together enough for people to know who she was, to really introduce herself to people, to develop her swagger, her charisma, whatever. The coconut meme could only take her so far. Kamala is brat could only go so far. And well, yes, Biden should have left a little earlier, but none of these things exist on their own. So coming up next on the blame game, that was a quickie because we all I feel like that was kind of obvious. Like all of us were kind of whatever. And I also think that we got a little too excited in talking about how old and decrepit Joe Biden is when Trump is the same age as him, or a year older or a year younger. Put it on screen. And yes, Trump seems to have more of his faculties, but he also is forgetful as well. He also is a bit, what's going on here? Sometimes they're both giving geriatric, but it is kind of ageist if you think about it. The way we treat young people in positions of leadership, we don't allow for the imagination that young people could be in positions of leadership and actually be doing good. I'm just saying, we need some young blood up in there. They're both old men, okay? And the average age of the United States citizen is what, in their late 30s? The average age of a US politician is 60s. I'm gonna put all these numbers on screen. If that's the case, how do we know that the average citizen's interests are actually being recognized? And listen, Trump won the popular vote. I don't argue with me, argue with the facts. I don't like that. I don't love it. It's one of the first times I think in my life that I've seen, but that's what had happened. He won the popular vote too. So a lot of things went wrong. Speaking of other things that went wrong, people say the Democrats went too far right. They don't know who their base is. They were trying to appease centrist and center-right folks instead of considering going even more left. And if Bernie would have run, he would have won, and all of these things. I do think there's something to be said about the fact that Bernie is so unapologetically socialist and how that can be off-putting to a lot of people. But when you're going through all this damn inflation and groceries costing way too fucking much, a socialist starts to sound pretty good to an American ear that's been primed to be anti-communist, socialist, all that sort of government interference propaganda, you know. But the other issue is that Kamala had a lot of wealthy people voting for her, yes. So did Trump, yes. But the Democrats are starting to be seen as the party of the mainstream media. The mainstream media is the elite. And the elite, the uppities, they aren't like they're not like us. They're not like us. They're not like the regular people. And the Democrats used to be associated with the working class, the everyman, you know? Was FDR a Democrat? I'm gonna look that up. But you know, yeah, FDR and all of his programs and whatnot after the Depression, using the government to build infrastructure, to hire people, to get the country economically out of this situation. And also World War II kind of helped that. But the Democrats used to be seen as more progressive, and a lot of people think that they went too far right and lost a lot of voters. A lot of people didn't vote this year. Like they lost their people. They don't know what's going on. I want to quickly add that like this is just a thing that from political commentators that obviously know more than I do because I'm not a political commentator, but from those folks that have been talking about this that I've been listening to, it seems like all around the world, whoever was in positions of leadership after the first few seasons of Miss Rona, whoever was in charge, whatever political party was in charge, was ousted, and people wanted new representation, new blood. And this tends to happen after a certain amount of time, you know? I mean, George Washington in his mouthful of slave teeth had one thing correct when he was like, I don't want to be the leader for too long. There needs to be a limit. After a while, people get sick. After a while, people want something different and think that something different is going to, it's like a new fresh pair of clothes. You're like, I have something different. I'm going to feel different. I'm in a new country. I'm going to feel different. We have a new political party in the House, in every branch of this government. I'm going to feel different. Well, you're going to feel something. You're going to feel something. Might be some tariffs. Not only that, even though the Biden administration did a lot of really great politics, people are never going to be satisfied with what you do. That's just what it is. You have too many people to please. Everybody has different expectations, different wants, needs, and desires. It's never going to be a full victory. But record numbers of young people showed out to vote for him in 2020. And it seems like they didn't care as much about young people's issues and wants. And it's not to say young people still didn't turn out to vote, but not in the same numbers. So if you have, I'm thinking of things like the incoming TikTok ban. I'm thinking of one of the main issues that I saw a lot of rhymes with menticide. A lot of young people care about this issue. And it didn't seem like the Democrats were willing to be transparent or honest about the fact that we're funding this menticide, and that didn't seem like they were on the side of students when they were making encampments throughout universities. It just didn't seem like they were on the side of Muslim Americans and Arab Americans. It just didn't seem like they cared. And a lot of those folks were like, well, then I'm allowed to withhold my vote, which leads me to the next people chose to blame, at least on TikTok, Muslim Americans, Arab Americans. People were blaming them for either not voting or, leaving the presidential part blank and just voting locally down the ballot or voting for Trump. It is wild to any of us, right? That if you care about this issue and you're not going to vote for Kamala, why even vote for Trump? I get it, because it's like neither one of them seem to care about this issue. And I don't want to say this issue because these are people's lives. YouTube is very annoying about the way you're allowed to talk about certain things. So I apologize, just so y'all know. I'm not trying to be like, anyway. Now, for some of us, we can look past that, and I'm not trying to be cold-hearted by saying that, but I'm saying some of us, because there is less of an attachment, so to speak, because empathy is a spotlight and it gets dimmer the further out you go. I hate to admit it, but that's kind of how it works. But it doesn't mean you can't empathize with people still. But like when it comes to certain issues, like if I know I care a lot about certain domestic issues, I'm going to vote about those things. People were so angry about this, particularly black women, were on TikTok talking about we're going back to Starbucks. We're going back to McDonald's. We did our part because, black folks typically always vote Democrat. And yes, Trump made inroads with black men and Latino men, yes. But the majority is still with the Democrats, especially black women. So the black women were on TikTok and were like, we're tired. We're not doing this. We're not doing it for everybody else. No. And I hear you. I understand the frustration. I get it. When you're like, I did my part. Where the heck were y'all? I get it. I just also like the thing about democracy is that you can't tell people what they can or cannot do with their vote. You can't. And so, yes, people have died for that right to vote. Yes. And I'll get to in a second the thing that we take for granted with that. But people died for the right for people to choose. And as much as you want, you can't force someone to choose to vote the same way that you would just because you are caring about certain rights and freedoms. And I get it because I still voted. I was like, listen, I don't love it. The money's going there. It's going to go there with Trump or with Kamala. And at least with Kamala, I can get a few other rights and I'm closer to getting the rights that I actually want and more progressive. We're going closer to this side that I want than if I voted that way or didn't vote at all, and didn't allow for maybe this person to get a few more votes. The third party, they didn't have the numbers to do that. And I know people say, well, we should vote more. There should be more parties. Listen, I can't change the U.S. government in 10 years. Okay? None of us can. I'm talking about working with the government and the things that we have now. Trying to dream of a better future, but understanding that future is going to be one most of us don't see. So what can we do now to sow the seeds of that future? Putting people in politics in positions of power that are going to be the least adversarial to the things that you want, especially because this round of whatever Trump is about to do is going to have repercussions for decades. Reagan is a motherfucker. I talk about way too much and curse all the time because anytime I'm looking up anything and I'm trying to talk about socio-political issues, his name is somewhere in the ether. His legacy is somewhere around. The Supreme Chief Court Justice John Roberts, worked in Reagan's administration, was appointed in 2005 by the Bush administration. How old were some of y'all in 2005 if you were alive? That person is still on the Supreme Court. Do you see what I mean about how these things will have lasting repercussions for decades? So for me, that's what I'm thinking about. And unfortunately, knowing that either way I slice it, because of the empire, the democracy, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be on the side of menticide either way and funding multiple simultaneously. I hate to say that. I hate to say it, but that shit, going back to the point of people dying for your rights and people not taking advantage of that. Listen, we're very removed from witnessing people being beaten in the streets and water hosed in the streets to fight for their right to vote. We're very removed from that, even though it wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. As people, especially young people, we are very removed from that legacy, from that kind of, you see that and you go, how could I not? How could I not participate in this system, right? Even if it has its faults, even if I don't fully trust it, even if X, Y, Z, how could I not? Unfortunately, that system has left a lot of us very disgruntled and very dejected, very broke, very tired, very like, what the fuck is the point? I go to a school, I'm in debt, I can't afford a house, I can't afford anything. I'm living with roommates or my parents till I'm dead. My parents aren't going to be able to retire now. Like all of the things that you were promised and said that you were supposed to get, the promise of living in this part of the world that gets to take advantage of other parts of the world. It's true. We got to be honest about it. To be disadvantaged. Yeah. This is all not given or guaranteed for some of us. We forget how connected history is. Something like Ronald Reagan, who also said he was going to make America great again. You know, the 80s. That's only a couple decades removed from the civil rights movement. That's only a couple decades removed from Black people fighting for their right to vote and getting it. That's only a few years removed from the height of women's lib. Reagan's a response to those things. This make America great again. In the way that Trumpism and this MAGA time period we're in was a response to Obama era hope and optimism and yes, we can. And a Black person in charge. What? Uh-oh, no, things are getting a little gay marriage. No, no. People are starting to say trans representation in the media, even though the population of trans people isn't as high as it is in the media, but we're going to fearmonger that? No. This can't be what's going on here. It was reactionary, right? Just like Trump is the anecdote for some people to all of this progressive too muchness, all of these secular wild secular values. Reagan was also a response. And a lot of us are still dealing with the repercussions of his presidency. 2 terms. And now Trump gets to have 2. And he already has 6 Supreme Court justices. And I don't even have the number. Maybe I'll put it on screen if I'm not lazy. But like the number of justices at the state level, girl. So what the heck do we do? Sorry, this feels like it's ending on a very pessimistic note. One thing I would say is I think it's good to learn about things like the Supreme Court. I think listening to podcasts like More Perfect really helped me kind of understand, okay, this actually does have a lot of repercussions. The amendments are amendments for a reason. The law wasn't perfect, and people have fought for certain things to be adjusted and changed in laws in our Bill of Rights so that it includes more progressive legislation. And when you have Supreme Court justices that are more willing, that are more conservative and want to roll those, that are not only more conservative, but more conservative and refuse to separate the law from their conservatism, because there have been cases in the past where Supreme Court justices were able to. Roe v. Wade, it's not like there weren't conservative justices on the court at the time. They just were like, it's not our business. Anyway, but learning about the importance of what exactly the branches of government do and how it impacts and affects, trickles down into the local level is helpful. So if you have any recommendations for people and y'all want to give them to each other below, yeah, comment them. And anyway, sorry, this is so bleak. I didn't mean for it to be bleak, but like, girl, I don't know what to tell you. Godspeed, everybody. Thanks for watching.